Hi everyone, week 5 here at EOU, History 202. This week we are dealing with the 1920s, sometimes called the Roaring Twenties. We are going to look at how the Roaring Twenties was on one side of things, an era of prosperity and economic growth, an era of movie stars, an era of symbolic sports superstars like Babe Ruth and other, great icons of American culture, like Charles Lindbergh and the Spirit of St. Louis. But how on the other side of the 20s we have, one, the economic signs of the Great Depression, and also the presence of a tremendous amount of crime and violence and inequality in the United States. The 1920s is not only the period of amazing performers like Josephine Baker, not only the period of amazing cultural or social crazes like the dance, the Charleston, but it was also the decade in which the KKK had its highest membership ever due to a tremendous amount of racism and opposition to immigrants in the United States. It was a period of tremendous corruption in terms of organized crime. It was in violence because of organized crime. It was a time of tremendous racism and also much inequality. So we're going to look at the 1920s from this perspective. In one respect, the Roaring Twenties, the Jazz Age, a period of sexual revolution in the cities, a period of superstar athletes, movie stars, and performers, but also a period of violence, crime, the signs of the economic decline of the Great Depression, and also tremendous level of racism and anti-immigrationism and so forth. Reading for this week is from our textbook, Chapter 20. We also are looking at documents 130 and 136 from Voices of Freedom. Don't forget that the end of this week, on Sunday, the end of this week, paper option 1, if you choose to do it, is due. You have 3 options to do one paper during this course, and this is the first one. Your next one will come a week after the second test, and the following one will come alongside the last test. Remember, you write your paper using the document reader. So you'll go to the document reader, you will choose at least 3 primary sources from the section of that was dealt with that test section, and you will use those primary sources to write a 500 to 600 word essay that makes a brief but nonetheless interesting historical argument using primary source documents. I strongly advise that each of you do the first one or at least the second one. Don't wait till the last one. And if you do the first one and you do poorly, you can always do the second one, and I'll drop the lowest grade, and you'll get the grade will be raised because I'll keep the highest one. So if you do the second one after you do the first one, it can't hurt you. So I highly recommend you do the first one, get it out of the way. So if something happens, you don't have to worry about something occurring that would cause you to take a 0 or causing you to do the last one, and then you do the paper wrong and you lose a bunch of points or something like this. So so I recommend doing the first one. It's not a long paper. I want to see, what I'm really interested in seeing is that you're looking at primary sources and you're analyzing them and making a historical argument. That's what I'm really interested in. You choose your own topic, make your own argument. Okay, so factoid for this week is this. During the 1920s, one of the biggest, probably the biggest cause of organized crime and violence in places like New York City, most infamously, of course, in Chicago, with the gangs of Pollock, Joe, Saltus, and of course Al Capone. That violence, that organized crime, the emergence of the gangs of the 1920s were all related to prohibition. The 18th Amendment at the end of World War I had been passed, and it prohibited sales of alcohol in the United States. And it was a tremendously problematic piece of legislation. President Warren G. Harding was notorious for being a drinker during Prohibition. He was the first president of the 20s. And so Americans liked alcohol. And Prohibition did not prevent Americans from drinking alcohol. Instead, in cities, Americans would go to speakeasies and they would drink illegal booze in speakeasies. And ultimately, I mean, Al Capone referred to the people who got involved in the illegal smuggling of alcohol as smart young people, people that saw an opportunity to make a profit and went with it. Well, the problem is that Prohibition led to the rise of organized crime, as all kinds of individuals, gangs, trading individuals and shipping companies from foreign countries even would get involved in smuggling alcohol to the United States. And so it became the core of organized crime in the country during the 20s. The prohibition of alcohol was, as all of these organized gangs and so forth were involved in the illegal distribution, smuggling of alcohol. Well, this is the factoid. Off the coast of the northeast United States, from around about Atlantic City up to New London, Connecticut, 30 miles off the coast, there was this line, imaginary line, that authorities called Rum Row. And it was called Rum Row because all of these foreign ships, trading ships, would come to the United States and they would sit out in basically international waters about 30 miles off the coast. And they would sit out there with their hulls full of booze. And rum runners, which were these little boats, would come up to the ships. They would receive the cargo, they would purchase the illegal liquor, and then the smaller rum runners would then go back quietly under veil of darkness back to the cities where the illegal booze would be unloaded secretly outside of the control of customs officers. And so there was upwards of, at one point in 1925, you would regularly have upwards of 60 to 100 ships just literally parked out there 30 miles off the coast of the United States in Rum Row, waiting to have their illegal booze picked up. And the illegal booze to be shipped back in the States. Many of the ships were of British origin. The majority of the illegal rum shipping vessels came from Great Britain for whatever reason, though there were also French vessels of other origin as well. So the factoid is Rum Row, the imaginary area 30 miles off the coast of the Northeast where foreign ships used to come to have the illegal booze picked up by rum runners and then taken back into the Northeast to fuel the appetite for alcohol that Americans, particularly in cities like New York City, possessed. All right, guys, have a great week. Let me know if you have any questions. Put that factoid in the extra credit discussion forum for the week, and let's have a great week. All right, guys.